What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and today we're going to get into my top 10 lessons learned, my takeaways, my observations, all of that for Week 15, the first week of the playoffs. It was absolutely painful. Randomness all over the place, just chaos for the playoffs. Like, pretty much nobody performed. All the bad players played amazing. Now, we're going to get to that in a second. If you're new here, we post fantasy football videos every single day of the week, so make sure you're subscribed. Now, with that being said, let's go.
Thirsty, trying to choose. I know I'm critical. My nitty bag.
All right, fellas. This was wild. It kind of sucks. You know, we're all out here in the playoffs. Thankfully, I had a buy in one spot. Just like, if you won this week, consider yourself lucky. And we're actually going to start off the show just talking about the craziness of this week, because that is the top 10. That is the first lesson learned here, is that fantasy is cruel sometimes. Like, fantasy, there's so much variance. Like, there is no amount of preparation you can do to understand over the offseason that pretty much, in my opinion, I think your win-loss record during the season and making the playoffs, it's like a motorcycle zooming by, but pretty much you're making to the playoffs and having a good record are things you control. Those are very skill-based. I would say like 75% of that, 80% of that is mostly skill, is win-loss record, making the playoffs. Once you get into the playoffs, there is so much variance that happens week to week. When you need to have 3 wins in a row or even 2 wins in a row to win your championship, we are talking about a lot of variance. Adam Harstad, one of the OGs of fantasy, put out an article like years ago. I saw it brought up on Twitter. I'm actually going to see if I can find that real quick. All right, so I found it. Now, this is what Adam Harstad says. He's an amazing follow. He's literally probably like one of the OGs of fantasy football. He's a really, really solid analyst. Maybe one day we'll have him on the channel, but pretty much he said, now I know this is from a dynasty standpoint, but you can still apply it to seasonal leagues and, you know, whatever else. Whenever you're making the playoffs, he said, are you a fringe playoff team? You're probably going to lose. Are you the hands-down best team in the league with the first-round playoff bye already locked and loaded? You're probably going to lose. Even if you only need 2 games to take home the title, you'd need a 71% chance to win in each of them before it became more likely than not that you'd win the championship. Some league management platforms will track something called your all-play win percentage, whatever. Pretty much, if you don't have a percentage chance to win by 70% or more in both of your matchups, even with a bye week, you're still more likely to lose your championship than win it, even if you're a huge favorite, which is a pretty wild stat. And all I say is, from all that, is that it was a brutal week this week. A lot of us got bumped out of the playoffs, even with really good teams, so don't beat yourself up about it. Really, all that comes down to in terms of skill is record, making the playoffs. Once you get into the playoffs, a 3-week sprint of, you know, just having to string together 3 straight teams, very often the best team in fantasy isn't the one that wins the championship. Now, I will say that is a flaw of the game, but it is sort of more fun that way. You know what I mean? Like, at that point, you might as well play best ball if you don't want that to be the case. You know, there are some things to combat it, but the less chaos involved, in theory, the less fun that fantasy becomes. So it is kind of a push and pull there. And then also, to make matters worse of how random the playoffs are altogether, this week was insane. A little over 27 years is how long it's been since we've had a Sunday this bad in terms of touchdowns. Now, as you guys can see from this tweet from NFL Research, a total of 40 touchdowns were scored on Sunday, the fewest on a Sunday with at least 10 games since November 27th, 1994. So not only did all of the studs not play well and did teams get hurt, but we had a really low-scoring Sunday. It was just a really shitty week for the fantasy playoffs to start in. So just all kinds of randomness. We had Godwin, Evans, Fournette all go down. Really weird Buccaneers game, Saints game where the Bucs scored 0 points. So every team out there that got carried to the playoffs with a Buccaneers stack, like if you had Tom Brady, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, you were for sure in the playoffs, and they bumped you. Guys like Gabriel Davis, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Russell Gage outscored guys like Jamar Chase, Deontay Johnson, CeeDee Lamb, T. Higgins, you know, guys that you were expecting to produce when you played them this week. You had Kyler Murray and the Cardinals get killed by the Lions, which I want to say, I think I saw a stat out there where it was like the first time I want to say that a 1-win team lost to like a really good team by double digits or more. It was just, it was an insane Sunday. You know, football is a really random game, you know. All my teams played terrible. It was an absolute bloodbath. If you won this week, consider yourself lucky. I lost a lot of money this week, but that is the nature of football. Still have some spots where we can kind of come home, win big, but brutal. So if you're out there, you're down bad, just like most of us are. Happens to the best of us. Most of the teams that won this week probably didn't deserve to win. Like if you are out there in the playoffs and you are fielding a team where you started like Gabriel Davis and Russell Gage in your 2 flex spots, your team doesn't deserve to be in the Final Four, but it is what it is. That is fantasy football sometimes. Like those of us that came out here and had, imagine having a team so good that you had Deontay Johnson, Jamar Chase in your flexes, you had, Najee Harris and Joe Mixon in your running back spots. Your team was garbage. So fantasy football is cruel sometimes, is our first lesson learned. Now, our second lesson learned is Duke Johnson is who we thought he was. All this time, I have been, or those of you guys out there that are OGs of the channel that have been subscribed with me through my first, summer, I liked Duke Johnson. Was he on the Texans last year? I liked him last year. I've always liked Duke Johnson. He was a really solid prospect, and he comes out here, and he goes insane yesterday. Now, it was against my New York Jets, which sucks, but it's also whatever. Who cares about the Jets? He's on Miami now. He had 22 carries, 107 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. He had 1 reception for 20 yards through the air, and today was the first, or yesterday, this is from Patrick Daugherty. It was his first 20-carry game of his career, his first 100-yard game of his career, and the first 2 rushing touchdown performance of his career. So that not only shows us Duke Johnson has a little bit of juice, but also just like highlights the randomness that was yesterday. We had Duke Johnson come out there, have a career day when no one was playing Duke Johnson. Maybe some people were. But like I said, I love Duke Johnson coming out of school, so that's cool to see. He was the all-time leading rusher at Miami. I will always hold this in my back pocket over Otis Anderson, Edgar and James, Clinton Portis, Frank Gore, Willis McGahee, all those guys, studs from Miami, Hall of Fame type running backs. He was the all-time leading rusher at Miami, and he did it in only 3 seasons. He also had 27 receptions as a true freshman, Duke Johnson, which is really crazy. So a guy that had a lot of production through 3 seasons, all-purpose skill set, decent size, it sucks it didn't, pay off. I doubt that he remains relevant through the rest of the season. We'll see. I kind of think Myles Gaskin, he had some kind of COVID issue. We have Phil Lindsay's there. You have Malcolm Brown. There's just a million running backs in that backfield. I doubt that Duke Johnson has now somehow won over the starting job, but it is just a fun little thing to note. Moving on, we have our number 3 lesson learned, and it's Devin Singletary, bell cow running back is what I wrote. And the guy is now locked and loaded, Bills RB1. It's not really up for debate. He had 22 carries, 86 yards, and a touchdown. Not really that crazy on a yards per carry basis, but still fine. And he had 1 catch for 10 yards. He pretty much looked, the part. He's going to be the lead back moving forward. Over the last 2 weeks, he's absolutely dominated the touches in this backfield. He had an 87% snap share over the last 2 weeks, 24 of 28 carries, 9 of 10 running back targets, and 61 routes to Matt Breida 7. So you can now comfortably drop Matt Breida, Devin Singletary, for these fantasy playoffs. I'm pretty comfortable with saying that he is going to be the lead guy in Buffalo. So that is, something to note, something to be aware of when it comes to the Buffalo backfield. Then we have takeaway number 4, and that is, or at least what I wrote down is Christian Kirk, wide receiver 1. And I'll be honest, when I was looking over the stats, I talked about him rest of the season risers video, but I believe that Christian Kirk would be the guy who got the biggest bump from DeAndre Hopkins leaving. But AJ Green also does play that outside X clashing type role like DeAndre Hopkins. He is kind of just a old, pruned up, like washed up version of DeAndre Hopkins is AJ Green. So it wouldn't shock me at all if AJ Green was actually the one that got the bigger bump between the two. But it ended up being Christian Kirk. He had 12 targets, 9 catches, 94 yards, and a touchdown. 25% target share, which is really, really nice. Even though this was a game where they lost against the Lions, Christian Kirk was still a great fantasy asset. He looked the part. He looked good. He had the most snaps, the most routes run, the most targets. Now, I will say, very weird that Antoine Wesley, just kind of a side note, Christian Kirk operated as an alpha, really good moving forward. But as a side note, what are we doing, Cliff Kingsbury? Cliff Kingsbury, first of all, has hit the quarterback lottery. Cliff Kingsbury, this is like I should have done like a lesson learned about Cliff Kingsbury. Off the top of my head, Cliff Kingsbury, I'm saying it wrong every time. I'm saying like Cliff Kingsbury. Cliff Kingsbury, he had Mahomes, I believe. I could be talking my ass, but I believe that he had Mahomes, Kyler Murray in college, like the only seasons where he was actually good in college. Maybe he had Manziel at a certain point. I don't think so, though. Then he goes to the NFL, and he lucks into drafting Kyler Murray first overall. This guy has hit the lottery in terms of quarterbacks just kind of like propping him up. I don't believe that Cliff Kingsbury is a good coach. His air raid, he was supposed to like come in and bring like this new like air raid type system. It sucks. It's not the, like, a lot of people like meme on it. It's not like an air raid. It's like the horizontal raid. Like, it's a lot of checkdowns and like stupid gadgety plays. And I really do think that he just kind of gets, his hand kind of pulled along by Kyler Murray. And he also just uses his skill position players poorly. Now, I know Rondale Moore had an injury during the game, which is why he didn't get a ton of snaps. But why are we playing Antoine Wesley more snaps, more routes run than AJ Green? That's confusing. I don't even know who Antoine Wesley is. I know all these players. I can tell you Andy Isabella went to UMass. I can tell you Rondale Moore went to Purdue. I can tell you Christian Kirk went to Texas A&M. I don't know who Antoine Wesley is. Never heard of him in my life. Or I've heard of him this season, but I don't know why he's getting play. I'd even say, like, why isn't Andy Isabella, getting those? I kind of liked him coming out of school. At the very least, you'd think that a second-round draft pick in Andy Isabella would at least get more run than Antoine Wesley. Like 7 targets to Antoine Wesley just feels irresponsible. Now, regardless, not sure why he has more usage than AJ Green. Very weird, but I guess it's like kind of good for Christian Kirk. Now, on to our number 5 takeaway from the Sunday slate of games. We have D'Onta Foreman is #GoodAtFootball. I was really excited for him coming in just because I loved him as a prospect out of Texas. I believe he was a part of that legendary running back class, right, with Leonard Fournette and Dalvin Cook, Joe Mixon, McCaffrey, Kamara. I want to say Aaron Jones, Austin Eckler were in there. Like, just an absolute wild class. And he was solid out of Texas. Really good speed score at like 233 pounds coming in there, kind of replacing, Derrick Henry. And he had 22 carries, 108 yards yesterday in a tough game. They lose to the Steelers. I do believe that this offense will bounce back a lot better once it has A.J. Brown, because D'Onta Foreman is giving you essentially what Derrick Henry can kind of give you. Like 22 for 108 isn't the complete Derrick Henry experience, but that's a somewhat normal Derrick Henry day. It's just that Ryan Tannehill, even on the back of a good running game, how is he supposed to open things up through the air when he has like Nick Westbrook and, like Ferkser and just an absolute, band of brothers out there at wide receiver? Now, D'Onta Foreman also had 3 for 2. He had 3 targets, 2 catches for 27 yards through the air, had a really good week. He's had 100 yards or a touchdown in 3 straight games now, so he is really good. He could be a potential league winner, and I think once A.J. Brown gets added back to the mix to give them, an aerial type element to this offense, I think that this offense will click just a little bit more than it has been recently. Now, moving on, we have a note I wrote that says, let's revisit Amon-Ra St.Brown. So we looked at him a couple weeks ago with his points per game at that point, his PFF grade. I have this sophomore database. I'm going to go into it in the offseason. I think, let me know what you guys think. I think week 17, we're going to do a normal slate of videos. Then I think week 18, I'll kind of like look back on the season, lessons learned, kind of where I screwed up on the season. I'm still kind of tentative with that because I do kind of want to reflect on the season, kind of where my process was wrong, what I need to tweak and all that. So I might do that week 18 and then take a little bit of a break because I do want to slow down on the uploads, take a little bit, I'm not really getting a Christmas break this weekend. I'm getting, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I know most of my boys that are in college are getting like whole months off for the winter semester. Now I know that this is kind of what I chose, but I'm just saying I would take a couple weeks off to just kind of like hang out, take a step back from the camera and chill. Now I would probably just like post like maybe like 2-3 videos a week during that time, but I'm not sure if I'm going to take that from like week 18 and on, or if I should make videos during week 18 and go on from there. Now, regardless, I want to, the whole reason why I want to have that pocket in time is so I can step back and chill out, but then also I can do stuff on the back end. Like I want to revamp the Patreon, the Discord. I want to revamp all the spreadsheets that I have. I need to update all the spreadsheets that I have. A million things on the back end I want to do. I'm just not sure if I want to do that week 18 or if I want to do that after week 18 into the playoffs, because there's not a lot of content I can do in the playoffs. Betting content doesn't do amazing. I'm also not even 21. So yeah, now with all that being said, let's take a look at Amon-Ra St.Brown. Now this spreadsheet, like I need to update this spreadsheet, right? So if you look at Deontay Johnson, you look at Marquise Brown, you look at Hunter Renfrow, none of those guys have it updated for this year of like top 12 seasons, top 5 seasons, because I want to say Deontay's top 12, and then I want to say at the very least Marquise Brown and Renfrow are having a top 24 season. Now, back to Amon-Ra St. Brown. A little bit of a backtrack there. Let me know down below in the comments what you guys want to see in terms of like that week 18, because I can do the week 18 stuff where I kind of like look back on like 0 RB and hits and misses and all that, but I also might want to kind of give that kind of stuff like a month to breathe where we can kind of get more data like win rates and all that good stuff. Now I will also say I don't know if that kind of content will be relevant a month out from week 17. Regardless, Amon-Ra St.Brown had 23.5 points this week. He had 11 targets, 8 catches, 90 yards, and a touchdown. He now on the season's at a 71.9 PFF grade, which is actually really good, and he's averaging 10.8 points. Again, I liked him coming out of school. I liked him a lot. He had a freshman breakout. He looked pretty good, even competing with Michael Pittman and Drake London. He looked good. Pedigree, 5-star kid. If he was a first-round draft pick or like a second-round draft pick, I would have liked him. If you gave Amon-Ra St. Brown first-round draft capital, I probably would have liked him, and as a top 3 to 4 wide receiver in this class. So he's a really strong prospect, an alpha wide receiver, broke out as a freshman again. So he is nice. The problem is that he got drafted in the 4th round, 112th overall. It's very hard. Once you're a day 3 pick, it becomes very hard, unless if you're Stephon Diggs, to go out here and be great. You have to be Stephon Diggs. You can be Stephon Diggs. You can be like Doug Baldwin. You can be, you're getting very fringy there. So you have to really, really prove yourself to be in that upper echelon. So that's why I'm pumping the brakes a little bit. And I wanted to kind of see the comps here, or not even pumping the brakes, but just kind of see what we're dealing with when I run it through the comps. And this is what we have. When we take into account his points per game, his PFF grade, and his prospect profile. Now his prospect profile, I use the model that Player Profiler uses, and I just take into account all the players that graded out similarly to him as a prospect. And you have some decent names, right? In terms of upside, you have Deontay Johnson, Marquise Brown. You also have a guy, Hunter Renfrow, which is like kind of a decent comp. I personally think more realistic, right? So those are ceiling comps. Deontay Johnson and Marquise Brown ceiling. I think a more realistic comp is Darius Slayton and Darnell Mooney. I think Darius Slayton and Darnell Mooney is probably much more realistic. Now, for me and where I'm going to be ranking him moving forward, we'll see, because I'm going to sit down and do the dynasty rankings probably after week 17 or week 18 wraps up. And I'll have, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm going to have him in the same bucket or similar bucket to where I had Darnell Mooney and Gabriel Davis after last year. Guys that showed flashes in year 1, looked good in year 1, but are held back by draft capital. Similar spot to where Darius Slayton was after year 1. It's very, those assets are really shaky in dynasty. So I'm kind of removing myself from a seasonal perspective, because I think, they have a terrible wide receiver room. TJ Hawkinson's hurt. Jared Goff has been playing pretty well. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown rest of season is like an interesting, flex type play. But in dynasty, again, I value him. Mooney, Gabriel Davis, Darius Slayton, somebody like that from the last 2 years. If somebody else in your league values him higher than that and sees him in the same range as a, Rondale Moore, Elijah Moore, Rashad Bateman, in that echelon of players, I'm selling almost instantly. I would take an early second for him. I would probably take a second and a piece for Amon-Ra St. Brown if I'm selling. So I don't mind looking to sell him in dynasty. But as I said, he has now earned my respect as a, Darius Slayton, Darnell Mooney type guy after year 1, Gabriel Davis in that range. Now, moving on. What I wrote down is the Cowboys offense is killing me. They've been so annoying. I've been a guy that has liked Kellen Moore in the past. He runs a really fast tempo, and he looks to be one of these more forward-thinking coaches. He's kind of sucked recently in terms of play calling. I was watching Red Zone, and they came on. It was like 3rd and 8 at one point, and he ran it up the middle with Ezekiel Elliott. The play calling has just hasn't been fluid. The whole offense feels like it's sputtering, even with Michael Gallup back, and the team is relatively healthy. They have all these weapons. They have Gallup, CeeDee Lamb. They have Amari Cooper, who hasn't gotten involved. They have Schultz, Zeke, Pollard. Dak Prescott hasn't looked good. Now, obviously, you can't just blame all of it on the coach, because I am somebody that believes that talent drives performance. But in the last 5 games, the Cowboys are at a 23.4 points per game, which is about around 16 to 18 in terms of the league right now. Through their first 9 games, they were at 31.6 points per game, which was first in the entire NFL. They were really buzzing through those first 9 games. Their last 5 have been much more, average to below average. And the thing is that this team has so many studs like CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, all these guys. they're not barely squeaking out wins, but they didn't dominate the Giants yesterday. What was it, like 23-9? Or I guess you can call it dominate, but it wasn't super pretty. Is kind of what I'm saying here. In the way that they're utilizing these players is also really weird, because you have Amari Cooper and you have Michael Gallup both running the same amount of snaps, running the most routes. They actually have CeeDee Lamb, who they believe to be their best wide receiver, or most of us believe to be their best wide receiver. They targeted him the most times. They now have him in a limited role as, like, I guess a slot guy, or just only a 3 wide receiver set guy, because he ran less routes, less snaps than Michael Gallup. They still targeted him the most amount of times on the team with 9 targets, but it's just weird. Like, I don't understand what they're doing. I don't know why Michael Gallup wouldn't be that wide receiver 3 role, especially knowing that, like, CeeDee Lamb is, like, your best player or your best playmaker out there in terms of wide receivers. So I just wish there was more going on. There's not a ton of fantasy points being scored. Dak hasn't been amazing. I don't know. I just wish that the offense looked better against teams like the Giants. Like, they should be going for, like, 35 against the Giants. Regardless, we have number 8, which is James Robinson is so back. The guy saw 18 of 19 running back carries yesterday. He saw 6 targets. He had 18 carries, 75 yards, 1 touchdown, 6 targets, 3 catches, 13 yards through the air. So 3 catches for 13 yards through the air on 6 targets, a little bit underperforming that, but the volume is amazing. Over 20 opportunities on the game. He had 17.8 points. He is firmly back into, with Darrell Bevell, he wants to get him the ball a ton. I know Trevor Lawrence wants to get James Robinson the ball a ton. He is now firmly in that range of, like top 15 to 18 running backs moving forward. I think that I might be bumping him a good amount in the rest of season rankings. And he now has the Jets next week. So he is going to be somebody that could really, kind of hammer teams in the playoffs, be one of those guys that you kind of needed to have. So we'll see. We'll monitor that moving forward, but his usage has been really good. Then at number 9, I wrote, I think it's time for me to respect Mark Andrews, right? So when I did my dynasty rankings, I always put Mark Andrews like below, Hawk, Fant, Waller, Kelsey, Kittle. I always had him like around like tight end 6. I think that Andrews has kind of cemented himself as somebody that you kind of need to put in the mix with Kelsey and Kittle at this point. Like, not even, but like behind them in a tier. Like, they're there. He's there in that tier. Get a sip of water real quick. My bad for that. But he is now the tight end 1 in points per game. He's ahead of Kelsey, who has 16.9. He had 35.6 points this week. He had 28.5 last week. Let me see what his actual points per game is at this point. It's insane. He is now at 17.4 points per game. Kelsey's at 16.9. Kittle is at 16.7. He's just been on an absolute tear. And it's actually kind of weird because you look at Mark Andrews as like a young up-and-coming tight end or maybe not young up-and-coming, but a younger, a guy who's like, if he kind of seems in the perception of fantasy as a guy that's like 23, 24, kind of making his way. He's 26 at this point. He's like a year younger than George Kittle and Waller. So you have to now respect him. He is tight end 1 in points per game. He's had 35.6 points this week, 28.5 last week. He had the big explosion where they had like the comeback on Monday night. Was it against the Colts maybe? But Mark Andrews has had some blow-up games. I'm ready to put him in that tier. He's probably going to be like a second-round pick next year. So it's just somebody you kind of have to respect as an elite tight end at this point. And Kyle Yates highlighted here. He, in his last 2 games, 10 catches, 136 yards, 2 touchdowns. 11 catches, 115 yards, a touchdown. He's now up to 85 catches on the season, most among tight ends, 1,062 yards, second most, and 8 touchdowns, second most. Wild. He has like 1,062 receiving yards. We have plenty of games to go. So Mark Andrews is now somebody you just have to respect as an elite tight end. When you talk about elite tight ends, he is now in there. Then our last lesson learned, observation, takeaway from this week is this is no longer James Conner's backfield. This is not that it's Chase Edmonds' backfield now, but it's no longer James Conner dominating all the opportunities. He only had 58% of the opportunities this week, with Chase Edmonds stealing some usage. The last 5 weeks, he's hovered around the 75 to 85% range in terms of opportunity share but now we're looking at a spot where he is going to be splitting time, just pretty much before what it was like before with Chase Edmonds. But I would say instead of like Edmonds being the 1A and Conner being the 1B, I would say it's reversed now. So it's Connor 1A, Edmonds 1B. So I would say Connor pretty much rest of season's somewhere in the, RB3 range, which sucks. I'd probably put him like high-end RB3. And I know that you would say that this is Chase Edmonds' game script, right, where they're behind to the Lions and it really plays into Chase Edmonds' hands. The thing is that Chase Edmonds only saw 1 target to James Conner's 2 targets. Edmonds was still held back on a pitch count. He's hurt. They didn't fully unleash him. So 58% opportunities for James Conner was almost generous in a way. This wasn't a team that was using Chase Edmonds as their 2-minute drill running back exclusively, right? He only had 1 target. So we are looking at a spot now where Chase Edmonds is really going to threaten a lot of James Conner's workload, especially in the passing game. So just something to monitor if you have James Conner. He is no longer a locked and loaded, top 15 RB like he's been the last 5 weeks. Now that's going to do it for us today, fellas. As always, I love you guys. Thank you for watching. Make sure you go down below. Subscribe if you're new. Leave a like. We're going to be going hard this week. It's Christmas week, so I'm only going to be producing content Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I'm going to cram it all in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, so I can enjoy the weekend off with my family, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I hope all you guys have a really nice holiday break here. Tomorrow we're going to do the waiver video. We're going to have some dynasty videos this week, actually. Now that I might as well just let you guys know. We're going to do, I think as of right now in my head, we're going to do today, which is top 10 lessons learned. Waivers tomorrow, which is like, it's weird to do waivers and top 10 lessons learned with these games on Monday and Tuesday night. Regardless, though, it's what has to happen. So we'll do lessons learned, waivers. Wednesday, I think we're going to do a dynasty mock draft. Thursday, we're going to do like a dynasty startup mock draft. Thursday, we're going to do a dynasty trade targets video because I know that most of my leagues don't even have trade deadlines. So hopefully some people out there can, kind of resonate with that, kind of talk about, if you're a contender who you should be trading away, trading for, if you're a rebuilder who you should be trading for, trading away. Then we're going to have my top 10 plays of the week for Thursday. Then Friday, we're going to have rest of season risers. I screwed something up. Wednesday is Wednesday is the dynasty mock draft. Thursday is the top 10 plays. Friday is going to be dynasty trade targets. Saturday is going to be rest of season risers and fellers. All right. So that's what we got on the slate today, fellas. I got to hop off here, start writing the waivers outline. I love you guys as always. I will see you in the next one.
Thirsty, trying to choose. I know I'm pretty cool. My nitty bag.